The 19th century is the century of greatest change in the history of Western civilization. The Industrial Revolution began to alter radically the social and economic climate of Europe and the United States. Of course, this change was greater in England than in any other country because it was the first country which had become industrialized. So the growth of urbanization, development of factories, availability of transportation due to the development of railroads and steamships, and enormous increase in the speed of living made it possible, within a century, an unprecedented increase in the population. These social and economic transformations result in shift in the prevailing outlooks and prophecies. Scientific discoveries had made technological innovations possible, and it not only influenced the material life of man, but also his thoughts and beliefs. These scientific developments, including Darwin's evolutionary theories, raised enormous hope for the future betterment of man's conditions and Earth. Although these changes were thought to be positive, industrial and scientific developments creates the working class which worked in wretched conditions and suffered the difficulties of poverty, while the factory owners were getting rich and richer. As the values of the new society were being established, hostile tendencies also began to emerge. We have Carlyle and Ruskin, who recommended a return to medieval form of social cooperation, and we have also individualism tendencies, which were unhappy with this ugly face of social conditions. The writings of Nietzsche and the whole movement of art for art's sake asserted the independence of the artist from society. And now, what happens to the literature of this era? Literature in 19th century was the most representative and the most widely influential of all kinds of arts. It expressed the social and intellectual situation of that time most fully and most memorably. The first 4 decades of the 19th century was ruled by the international movement of Romantics, and the literature in Europe little by little moved to another direction, which we call realism. The term realism has its origins in German culture, but as a literary term, it crystallizes only in France, and we have the flourishment of realism as a literary movement for the first time in French culture and literature, for example, in the works of Gustave Flaubert. The realists wanted a truthful representation in literature of reality, that is, of contemporary life and manners, and they thought that their method is inductive, observational, and of course, objective. In this case, the author's personality is suppressed and reality must be described as it is. And this is the influence of scientific thinking and mentality, that everything must be based on facts. Objectivity and observations were the 2 essential qualities of this scientific method, which shows that art is as truthful to realities as science. As I said before, the movement was started in Germany, and the English-speaking countries were the last ones to adopt the principles and programs of the realism. By the way, my name is Sohail, and if you're interested in topics related to literature, reading, literary criticism, and so on, hit that subscribe button to watch my future videos as well. And thumbs up for this video if you think it adds value so far. Realism and also naturalism, which needs a separate complete video, but it is very close to realism, they served against the romantic theory. Realists hold to ideas like truth, contemporaneity, and objectivity, which stands against the romantic notions of imagination, subjectivity, romantic historicism, and the glorification of the past. It is interesting to mention here that the realistic notion towards literature is not something new at all. We have examples of realistic scenes in classical literature, in ancient comedies and satires, also in Elizabethan plays and 18th century novels, beginning with Daniel Defoe and so on. The innovation of realism in 19th century literature is that it describes the contemporary society with a serious purpose, often with a kind of tragic tone, with sympathy towards heroes who are selected from the middle classes and lower classes. However, realistic works of art were not always about the triumph of the middle class. We have writers such as Gustave Flaubert, Charles Dickens, William Thackeray, who were the critics of the middle class and their values, and this causes their isolation from the society, but they always stand as the most important propagandists and reformers of the society in their own right. Realism is a broad artistic movement in Western culture, and of course it has many notions and principles, but I'm going to refer to three major principles of realism, which are the columns of this massive and huge literary structure. Number one is the objective reality. Realists believe that there is a world which exists beyond our perception or beliefs. This is why they strive to depict the world as it truly is, without a personal bias or subjective interpretation. Number two is the practical understanding. Realists believe that knowledge should be practical and based on experiences rather than theoretical or abstract. This is exactly where realism detached from the domains of romanticism. And number three is the description of everyday life. Realism is all about capturing the ordinary moments and experiences that make up our lives. This is why realistic novels are usually massive, with abundant descriptions of scenes and characters and abundant pages and so on. This final principle shows why realism is a comprehensive approach that shapes our views and interpretations of the world around us. The most important realist writers are Gustave Flaubert and de Balzac in France, Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, and George Eliot in England, William Dean Howells, Henry James, and Mark Twain in the United States, and Leo Tolstoy, Fyodor Dostoevsky, and Anton Chekhov in Russia. Knowing a brief history and principles of this massive movement makes it a lot easier for you to understand the works of realist literature. And if you're interested in the works of realism, you can refer to the authors I just mentioned. And you can start, I recommend you to start with Dickens, maybe Flaubert, or even Chekhov. You can start with these writers because their realism are the most basic ones, and you can start with them. Well, this is the end of this video, and I hope this helps you in understanding the works of realistic literature in the future. Thanks for watching. Take care.